Holly Schindler here, author of A Blue So Dark, bringing you the ReachOut Reads interview. For this interview, I'll be answering questions that came from the staff at ReachOut.com. I'll also be answering some additional questions that came straight from readers via Twitter. ReachOut.com is a site for young people who are going through a tough time. Whether it's being bullied at school, or being embarrassed in front of your friends, dealing with an eating disorder, or struggling with depression, you can find information, resources, and read real stories from other teens and young adults who've been there and made it through. The focus is on resilience and how to get help when you're ready for it. ReachOut Reads is ReachOut.com's effort to bring awareness to authors that handle topics like the stories they receive at ReachOut.com in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. In the beginning, Aura doesn't really cope with her mother's mental illness very well at all. She keeps the truth of what's happening to her mother secret. She doesn't let her father know what's going on. She's afraid to. She's afraid to reach out to her grandmother, who she's convinced doesn't even know that she is her grandmother. And she actually shuns her own artistic gifts as a way to try to protect herself from becoming ill. So she doesn't really deal with it very well. She kind of muddles her way through. But in a lot of respects, that's what drew me to young adult literature to begin with. Teens don't deal with many emotional issues that adults don't deal with. But what is different about a teen is that they have never dealt with these issues before. Aura has never had to care for another person before. So she's really muddling her way through in the same way her best friend Janny is having to muddle through being a teen mom and caring for her own little boy. But I think that's what's fantastic about teen literature, is that you get to, as an author, live through all of those firsts all over again. I think that Aura feels as though she has to shun her own creativity because Grace is not the first generation in their family to be both artistic and afflicted with mental illness. She's actually the second generation to be both artistic and mentally ill. So as Aura watches her mother sink deeper into the darkness of schizophrenia, she feels as though her creativity is going to possibly bring out the disease in herself. She begins to correlate creativity with mental illness. So in order to protect herself, she feels as though she has to shun her own artistic gifts. Aura begins to regard creativity and artistic impulses as an addiction in the novel. In fact, she compares artwork, because she sees the correlation now between artwork and mental illness, or begins to believe there is a correlation between the two. She compares it to smoking. and says that she's mad that she feels like she's been a smoker, a heavy smoker for decades, and no one has told her that smoking leads to cancer. That's how she feels about art. She feels like she's pursued her art only to encourage maybe the same mental illness that her mother has to come out in herself. We also have in the novel, we have next door neighbors who are both struggling with addiction, with drug and alcohol addiction. And there are two generations in that family. It's a mother and son, and they both are struggling with addiction. And what Aura sees is she sees a mirror image going on next door. She sees them struggling with addiction and sees that, if they don't quit, if they don't walk away from those substances are going to kill them. And she sees that about herself and her own mother. She thinks if we cannot get away from art, then it's going to kill us, if not literally, then at least spiritually or figuratively and emotionally. In all honesty, there's not much about the creative process that I don't like. But in all honesty too, I was also a very, very shy kid, very introverted, and I think I started writing as a way to speak. But I also used to view my shyness and my introversion as faults. But in all honesty, even though I'm not as shy as I was when I was younger, I'm still every bit as introverted as I was. But that's what allows me to write novels. If I didn't like to spend hours upon hours alone in my office with my computer, I'd never be able to write novels. So that just goes to show you, you should never be ashamed of your personality traits. You should always wear your personality traits with absolute pride. I initially drafted A Blue So Dark in late 2006. And that initial draft went really, really quickly. I was able to draft the book, edit it, and submit it in just about 2 months' time. I did have to rewrite that book globally about 4 times, and I'm talking rip this book apart, start at the beginning, completely rework it, about 4 times. And I went through several rounds of submission, resubmission with both agents and editors. I didn't sell the book. I sold the book myself, but it didn't happen until early 2009. And at that point, the book had been rejected more than 80 times, 80, by agents and editors. So that just goes to show you, you should never give up on a project you believe in. It really wasn't any harder to write about this topic than it was to work on my sophomore novel, which is actually a romance and has a much lighter tone. The process of writing those 2 books really didn't feel much different to me, even though the tone of the work was different. And I really don't have to be in a dark place mentally to write about a dark topic or about a dark situation any more than I have to be in the midst of a love affair to write a romance. When I'm working, I'm really focused on character and plot and the nuts and bolts of a novel. And in order to do that, I really don't need to be in the same place mentally or emotionally as my characters do. What I really wanted to explore in A Blue So Dark was not mental illness, but was creativity. What is the source of creativity? Why are some minds wired to be creative and some are not at all? And in some respects, Grace could have been afflicted by any number of mental illnesses, bipolar disorder, for example. But I was really sort of fascinated by the way that a hallucination is in some respects not quite so different from an artist's vision of what they want their end product to be, of what they want their end result of their current project to look like. You know, in both instances, those are images that only one person can see. And of course, with an artist, they know that what they're seeing is not real. They know where the line is between reality and fantasy. But it just seems like there are so many factors at play in the creative mind that are really not so different from a person who has hallucinations, either visual or auditory hallucinations. And I'm not a mental health provider, I'm not a psychologist, but just from the, the layperson's perspective, from my perspective, it's always seemed that if we could get a handle on the creative process, that we would then understand mental illness and vice versa. So that's why I was drawn to schizophrenia over any other mental illness, was that idea of a hallucination and an artist's vision being somehow linked. I just wanted to say thanks to ReachOut for featuring me and Jake, who had to get in at least one shot. I wanted to say thanks too for featuring A Blue So Dark during ReachOut Reads, and thanks to the readers for sending in those great questions via Twitter. Congrats to those readers as well, because they'll be receiving complimentary copies of A Blue So Dark. Thanks again, guys.